So today we are definitely happy to be partnering with Genesis today and the Center for Independent Living. And what we're going to be talking about today is tips for launching your special needs teen into adulthood. And we'll have some various resources out there that might be relevant to you in your journey. So from a housekeeping perspective, what we want you to know is that we can't see you and we can't hear you, but we do know you're there and we're glad you're here. We do want you to put your questions in the chat box today. And we're going to answer as many questions as we can. Genesis is going to be monitoring that chat box. We'll take them throughout the presentation. You don't have to wait till the end. And if you've got a good question, put it in there. Probably somebody else has that same question. So we love to entertain that. So thanks so much for being here today. A lot of these webinars were born, COVID happened and, we all started working from home, but we still all had a quest for resources and knowledge and understanding on how to navigate some of these things. And if you have a child with special needs that's never turned 18 before or has kind of never moved in that direction, a lot of times parents feel a little overwhelmed, or they feel ill-equipped, or they feel like the process is really hard. And so we try to make that a little bit easier for the families that we work with. And just a little bit about myself, I am a parent to 4. I have 2 kids with special needs that have transitioned. I eat, sleep, and breathe this both personally and professionally. And what I will say is you're not wrong. The journey is a little bit difficult sometimes. And so, again, that's why we're here and, why we put these webinars out there. So as we're thinking about transition, I think first things first that we want to talk about is setting realistic expectations. Where are they? Meet them where they are. They are where they are. They're not behind. As parents, sometimes we feel like our kids are behind, or they're maybe not where they need to be, because we're always kind of doing that comparative game that starts early, right? Starts in preschool, as far as comparisons, but, really understanding the diagnoses and the challenges and strengths, and thinking about, what is the path? Is the path a traditional path? Is it a non-traditional path? And just really keep an open mind and consider all the options. It's not a race. And so if we've got kids, oftentimes every week we hear people say, we hear things like, I'm hopeful and optimistic. My child isn't there yet. They haven't arrived yet, but I'm hopeful and optimistic, and things are moving in the right direction, but we may be a lot slower, to get there than maybe what other neurotypical kids are. We have other families that we serve that they definitively know that they have kids that are going to need care for the rest of their life. Okay, just depending on those diagnoses and challenges. So in keeping an open mind and considering all options, I am fully aware that some kids will never drive, and that's okay, but some kids will. We may have kids on the high functioning autism spectrum, maybe ADHD, some other impairments that maybe in the future they can drive. But one thing I want to tell you here on this delaying of the driver's license, most cities have a major hospital that kind of can do a driving assessment, and it's the same driving assessment that stroke patients have. After they've had a stroke, to see if they're safe on the road, how are their reaction times, and they test a whole variety of different things. Oftentimes, your health insurance is going to pay for that. So if you've got a kid that you think maybe could drive, but you're not quite sure, you want them to be safe for themselves and others, you may want to consider some of those programs out there. Disability driving schools. There are some disability driving schools that are designed to do the behind the wheel training for kids that have disabilities, and those drivers and instructors are they're very well trained. They very much know what they're doing. So just think about that and kind of Google those for your area. I know the ones in the greater Houston area, but that's something to think about. Think about trade school, community college. We've got kids that aren't cut out to go to community college or the university, and maybe that's not ever, but maybe just not right now. So there are programs such as the Texas Workforce Vocational Rehab VR, and that basically what the whole program is designed to do is to close the gap to impediments to employment for the disabled. VR starts as early as age 14, so 14 to 22. So if you have a child that has a disability, you can get them going in this program as early as 14. They've got such things as, they'll do some testing to find out what those impediments to employment are. It could be a vocational evaluation. It might be something like a neuropsych test. It might be a learning disability test, something like that. So just think about that and just know that there's help out there. In the state of Texas, they have big budgets, state and federally funded budgets, and so they help families in that way. There's also such things as registered apprenticeships, and then you can kind of look at that on the Department of Labor. There's a such thing as registered apprenticeships for individuals with disabilities, and they have kind of more of a hands-on training program. We could think about a reduced course load, living at home versus on campus. There's any number of combinations that might be a good fit. But basically what we just say is like really think about where you guys are and just remember that it's not a race and it's really okay wherever that is. Maybe your student stays in the public school until age 21. Maybe at age 21, they move into a transition program. Maybe that is a good fit. No, there's no right or wrong answer here. So finding a good fit, schools, college, extracurricular activities, career path, work setting, those things like that. And basically what we're thinking about here is just really thinking about what it is. So if you have an ARD, you have your IEP in place, is it your plan for your child to stay in the public school until age 21? Have you made that clear in any of the ARD meetings that you've had that is your plan? So think about those things because sometimes kids end up kind of pushed out or whatever, and maybe it was your plan, but it wasn't communicated. So, kind of talking about the career path and the work setting, thinking about all of these things sooner versus later, because the time, it's like our kids start high school or our kids start junior high. I mean, honestly, they start kindergarten and you think, oh man, I have a long time. These kids are babies. And then before you know it, we blink, life is busy and these kids are grown. And so what we don't want to have happen is that the kid is leaving the private school or the public school and there's no plan and they come home. And they sit, they do nothing. And so that we want to have a better plan than that. So one of the things that I think that is important, so if we're considering moving on to the community college or the university, historically, what you may have known is you've had accommodations in the schools, right? You've had accommodations for your loved one with a disability, and you've done these ARDs, you've done the IAP, maybe you have a 504, depending on what you have in place. But what you got to know is that when you move over to the community college or the university, your accommodations don't move over with you, okay? So you got to plan early for that. So the first thing that I'll tell you guys is that when you start looking at community colleges and you start looking at universities, all schools are not created equally when it comes to working with individuals with disabilities. Some schools do a better job of this. So what I would say, I always say create a spreadsheet, and feel free to roll your eyes if you want to. Don't worry, I can't see it, but I even roll my own eyes. I hate spreadsheets, but anyway, because these schools, these colleges and universities, they don't work out of the same hymnal and songbook. They all do things differently. It's better to create a spreadsheet so that way you can keep track of deadlines, keep track of requirements, and what you got to do. But what my suggestion as a parent, because I've done this with my kids, and it is a hard job, by the way, and your kids do need your support, whether neurotypical or kids with disabilities. I suggest narrowing down the schools, looking at the various programs that are out there, the various schools that are out there, narrowing down the schools to a list of the schools that have the degree path or the program that your student is interested in or would most likely be a good fit for. That would be the first step. The second thing that I would think about would be talking to and reviewing the offices of disability of each of those campuses. So just as schools are not created equally, the programs are not created equally, the offices of disability are not created equally. Some are much bigger and better. Some have bigger budgets. Some have lots of software and adaptive equipment and other things to help your student. Some don't. So think about the accommodations that your student needs. Is it voice-to-text recognition software? Is it audiobooks? Is it Braille? Whatever. Those things that you might need, the things that have led to your students' success in their high school career, and then start eliminating schools based off of their ability or inability, either inability to meet your students' needs. So that would be my recommendation. I know it sounds like a big job, and I found it very frustrating as a parent when we were kind of embarking on this journey that there's just not one set of rules. Like I said, every single school does it differently. They all have different plans. So let's talk about SAT and ACT and some of these exams that are required. Because of COVID, schools have changed a lot of what they require as it relates to SAT and ACT. If your student is planning on going to like a certificate program or to the community college, they don't have to do the SAT or ACT. It will not be necessary, so you don't necessarily have to put them through that stress if they're definitely planning to go to the community college first. There are such things as accommodations through the SAT and the ACT. You could get extra time testing in a non-distracted a non-distracted environment. There's all kinds of different accommodations that you can get for those tests. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to collegeboard.org for the SAT. You can put that in the chat box, Genesis, collegeboard.org for the SAT, and then the ACT.org is the other one that you're going to go to. And in the search box, once you get to those websites, you're going to say disability accommodations or accommodations, and then you'll be able to pull up the forms specifically that are going to be required to be signed off on by a doctor, and it will tell you how to submit those forms so that way you can get accommodations set up for this testing. And furthermore, if you are in the public school, there are people at the school that are signed up to be in charge of SAT and ACT, so you can also work with your local school on the accommodations, and they can kind of run point on that. Another thing is if you're entering into the community college for Texas, there's a TSI, Texas Success Initiative Test, okay? And so basically, you don't have to take the SAT or the ACT, but that's the test that you have to take to see if you are on point enough to take 4 credit classes on the college level. So they test reading, writing, and math at this time, and you could pass any one of the sections. Like you may pass reading, but you might not pass writing or math or something like that. So if you pass reading, then you could take courses in reading for credit, but you can't take courses for credit in the ones that you haven't passed until you pass that TSI. There are all kinds of free and paid for. I did both free and paid for with my kids, practice simulators for TSI online. I like the paid for one a little bit better, but don't listen to me on that. Check with your local community college, because some of them have some programs available to you as well. Genesis, how are we on questions?
We did have one question. Would this be recorded to send to the attendees? And I think you mentioned it at the beginning, like that we will, or that you will be sending this, and that it's going to be on YouTube as well.
Okay. Yes. So today's slides, a copy of today's slides. You don't have to write down everything I'm saying, and the recording will be emailed out later today. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. So the bottom line is check the requirements early. Be prepared. If your kids are planning on going to college or the university in the fall, start checking with the offices of disability to what are they going to have to do to have these accommodations in place. If they're going to take the SAT or the ACT and you want them to have accommodations, plan that early, because you don't want them to take them without the accommodations. So thinking about some additional information as it relates to accommodations, most schools, and I say most, it's not all of them, require updated testing within the last 3 to 5 years. What documentation do you have in place documenting your child's disability and why or what accommodations they need? Most schools say 3 to 5 years. I've seen some schools bend on this a little bit because of the pandemic, and it was actually very difficult to get testing. So I've seen some schools relax this a bit, but you're gonna want to check that. What if your child has a permanent disability? It doesn't really change. It's just been the same for years and years and years. And so we don't do testing every 3 to 5 years. In that example, what you can do is you can ask the Office of Disability if they will accept outdated testing if it is accompanied by a letter from your physician saying that the condition hasn't changed, that the need for accommodations remains the same, and providing any additional details. Because I've actually seen schools say, yes, we'll absolutely take that. It is best if it's coming from a longtime physician where you've had a long-time relationship with this physician as opposed to the one that you saw once, right? So just a thought on that. So the FERPA. The FERPA will be needed to release information. This is a source of frustration to many parents on the college and university level. So honestly, the FERPA really needs to even be in place if the child is 17. But once the child turns 18, the school is not going to talk to you. They don't care. They're not talking to you unless you have this FERPA on file. Your student has signed the FERPA basically to release information. Yes, they will let you pay the tuition. And no, they don't care that you pay the tuition. The FERPA is the law. It has to happen. So just know about that. And you can ask the admissions office for that. You guys can all sign off on that and have it on file. And to be or not to be, and whether you should have a FERPA or whether you should not, I'm a parent that thinks that you should. You know, with kids with disabilities, they might need a little help, and if the FERPA is on file, then certainly you can do that. And obviously, we're graduating and we're moving them in the direction of independence, and that's what our goal is. But they might need a little bit of help right at first. The other thing that I'll just mention here, we do recommend, so whether you have kids with disabilities or you also have neurotypical kids, when you send your kids off to college, we definitely do recommend a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney being on file, including, for those neurotypical kids. If because of HIPAA, because of everything, these kids get in an accident, they have a mental health crisis, they're taken by ambulance to a mental health facility. They won't even tell you where the kid is. If you don't have this on file. So it's just really important to have that healthcare power of attorney. I'm not a fan of do-it-yourselfer legal work. I typically refer to lawyers, but such thing as a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney, you probably could download. You may have legal services through your work that might provide those things, but it's just something to be thinking about. So another thing when it comes to some of the accommodations and thoughts on the accommodations is I think that it's just I think the biggest takeaway is whether or not they needed to have the SAT or ACT, what scores do they take, how old as far as the testing is concerned. These are all the big moving parts, but I would just say again, I cannot convey this enough. Every school is completely different. So take a visit to their Office of Disability. Sometimes they call them ODS. Sometimes they call it Disability Services. They have some different names that they call it even, but look at their website. They usually have some pretty good websites out there. So reasonable accommodations are required if it does not pose undue hardship in the workplace. So you can check some of these things out at the Department of Labor and the Job Accommodation Network as well. Okay, educational options post-high school, and here's what we always say: we don't work for them, they don't work for us. There are a lot of programs all across the state of Texas. There's programs all across the United States. Some are certificate programs that are geared towards an industry. It could be the hospitality industry. It could be the food and beverage industry. It could be, they have I lost it, like botanicals, like where they're working with flowers and things like that. There's all kinds of different ones, but there are ones that are 4-year degree programs, 2-year degree programs, certificate programs that are shorter, transition programs. And here's just a list of some of the ones that we know. And basically what we know of the ones that are on this list, they either have a great Office of Disability that we know of, or they have a great program that we know of, and in some cases they have both, right? So these are ones that are worth checking out. And what I will tell you is some of these programs, Because of COVID, some of them moved online. I think most of them have moved back to in person. There may have been like lesser students that they were taking in those programs. So you want to know about these early. When do their application dates open up? Who do they serve? How many spots do they have? Because some of these programs may have like a few spots. Like it might not be like, okay, well, we're taking 100, So you want to know what those timelines and deadlines are early. Basically, everything here is in Texas, except for Lynn University. Lynn University is actually in Florida, but they are a school that is known that works well with students with disabilities. So one of the things that we talk about here, and we always just like to let people know about Bloom Consulting. They have a lot of different programs. So I guess the first thing I would say is check out their website. So they may be an organization that can certainly help you on your journey. They do assessments, vocational evaluation types of assessments. They actually have a group home in the greater Houston area. But what I'm talking about now is the Campus Connection program. So this is basically a program to help neurodiverse college students with disabilities basically succeed in the post-secondary institution of their choice. They have in-person or virtual support. It's basically a wraparound program. And what I like to say, it's kind of like they're kind of getting a coach, right? And it's not you, because I don't know about you, but sometimes my kids in these teenage years, they don't want me. Like there's other people that are more effective in kind of talking to them and coaching them through things. They want to hear ideas from others. So this is a good program. It empowers students to problem solve, move towards independence, and the informed choice, greater self-advocacy is some of those things. So as we're moving our students towards more independence, this is a program that's worth checking out. And it's also worth mentioning that they have a connection to the Texas Workforce Commission and the vocational rehab. So it's possible that if you're connected to the vocational rehab program, that you could get connected with Bloom, and that their services would be covered through your IPE, through the plan. So you can go through them privately and check them out, but we've also seen where VR has picked up the tab for Bloom as well. Okay. So how do I get started with special needs planning? These are topics that people reach out to us and they have questions on every single week. Your situation is specialized. If you have a special needs loved one that may or may not need care for the rest of their life, not just yours, your situation is specialized. So understanding the difference between a special needs planner and a special needs attorney, and the difference of a special needs planner versus just a regular financial planner. So here at Consolidated Planning Group, we're nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. Our practice is nuanced and special needs, and the reason this is that when it comes down to money and dollars and cents, a lot of things maybe haven't mattered so much before because, quite frankly, maybe your student wasn't getting any SSI or Medicaid or any of those things. Maybe you made too much money, wasn't happening, but basically when they turn 18, everything changes. It's based off of their assets and their income. So the bottom line is having money in the right buckets is important, and a lot of advisors are not nuanced in special needs and accidentally end up having money in the wrong buckets that causes you or your loved one to disqualify from state or federally funded programs, and we don't want to do that. So a lot of times people are asking us, what's the difference between a special needs planner and a special needs attorney, and why do I need both? The answer is you do need both. And I like to summarize it by saying they're the paper, the legal documents, you got to have them, and we're the money, okay? So when it comes down to documents, I'm talking about special needs trust, third party, first party special needs trust. I'm talking about guardianship, partial guardianship, wills, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. They're the paper. We're the money. When it comes down to the money, what are we talking about? Well, number one, we're talking about money in the right buckets. Number two, we're talking about people come to us every week and say, what I don't know how to calculate or how to figure out what the future care costs will be for my child. I want to prepare. I want to plan and make sure that everything is set up properly so that way they'll keep benefits, but that their care is funded. How do we do that? So we're able to do those future care cost estimates. And we're also, this is a big one, and we'll talk more about it, is we're able to do a Social Security analysis. And that is a big deal. And because of SSI and Medicaid, but as parents, we pay into the Social Security system. And if we have a child that has a disability whose disability started prior to age 22, our disabled children are eligible to be covered under a parent's record. So we're going to talk more about that, but a careful Social Security analysis is important because it's going to tell you exactly when and how to pull the trigger on benefits and how not to leave money on the table and what it means to you. And what I'll tell you is about 80% of people that turn on their Social Security file it wrong. They're leaving money on the table. They do it too early. They do it too late. They don't understand the impacts of what they're doing. And oftentimes, I mean, the reality of the situation, the Social Security Administration, they're very, very busy. Most cases, they're understaffed, and they take an enormous number of calls and applications on a daily basis. So oftentimes when you're calling the Social Security, they're more order takers. They're not, let me educate you on everything you need to know so you don't mess up, pulling the trigger. You call them and you say, I want to turn on my Social Security. They're going to say, okay. So that's kind of basically how that works and kind of some of the differences. But because your needs are specialized, we suggest that you work with a special needs planner to help you formulate that plan and take into consideration the whole big picture. As a family, we're going to spend 25 as husband and wife, or if you're not married or whatever, but retirement, you're basically going to spend 25 to 35 years in retirement. Most people are going to need their retirement assets, the money that they've saved up over their 25 or 35-year career. Most people are going to need those assets. So where do the assets come from to fund care for our kids in the future? And we'll be able to help you with all of that. But to get started, you're going to gather all the necessary planning documents. These are basically all your statements, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, 401ks, 403bs, life insurance with your employer, life insurance outside of your employer, if you have disability, long-term care, all of the information that you have. If you already have wills and trusts, these are some of these documents, and definitely your full Social Security statement and your full earnings record as some more documents that you would need to gather. And then we're going to want you to develop a letter of intent. This is a template that we actually have. We've created, and it's a form fillable document, but we like to call this a family love letter, basically. And what we think about this is just think of you as a parent and maybe the other parent. When it comes to our loved ones with special needs, we know we eat, sleep, and breathe them. We know everything about them, the diagnosis, what meds they take, what makes everything go smoothly, what makes everything fall apart, where were they born, all of their details. That's basically what goes into a letter of intent. So basically, if you are a caregiver for an individual with a disability and you are incapacitated or no longer here on this earth, that your wishes are crystal clear on kind of, it's your wishes, but it's also kind of the daily routine. Because I always say that as parents, a lot of times we have forgot more about our loved ones than anybody will ever know. So if you can't talk and you can't communicate that, some of our kids don't communicate, then you want to have somebody else that knows how to fill in and how to take the next step. So that's the letter of intent is an important thing. Excuse me. On the letter of intent, we do recommend that you look at that probably twice a year. And if your loved one's situation is changing, rapidly, then you might want to look at it and update it more than that. So I would say on the letter of intent, we do recommend that it is some kind of electronic version, a Word document, a PDF, or something that you can update as opposed to being in a notebook or something like that. It makes it a lot easier. But we really want you to formulate a vision of how you hope things will look for your special needs child, but also for you and your own self and your own retirement and things like that, because there has to be a balance. So often we're seeing families that don't have that balance, where we are like superhero mom and dad all the time, and I'm not taking time, not taking respite trips, not, kind of doing things for ourselves. But there has to be some balance in that. And that is especially important. And we can help with this and kind of conversations on this. But that's especially important that when you have a student or a loved one that is definitively going to be needing care for the rest of their life. And I see in the chat box, do you have an example of a letter of intent that we could look at? And what we'll do when we send out that email today with today's slides and the recording for today, we'll go ahead and just include our form fillable PDF of a letter of intent, and you can use ours. We usually share those with our existing clients. But again, any steps that you guys can take to help move along your journey in the right direction, we're certainly happy to help you do that. So we'll just include that today in today's slides. Some of the questions. Yes.
I'm sorry, there's another question just came up. If your child gets SSDI and also has a special needs trust, when they pass, what happens to the trust? Does that go back to the SS?
So that is a very good question, and we have entire webinars on special needs trusts. The truth is, on a special needs trust, there's a first-party special needs trust and a third-party special needs trust, and it depends on what type of trust you have on if there is a Medicaid payback or not. First-party special needs trust, basically what a first-party special needs trust is, it's the kid's money, it's their earnings. Maybe they got a settlement from a lawsuit or a refund from a scholarship. That's first-party money. It's their money. Third-party money is typically when we leave money to a third-party special needs trust, like an inheritance or life insurance proceeds or things like that. That's third-party money when it's set up properly. There is no Medicaid payback on third-party money, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but that is a great question, and there is a lot of confusion on that. So a lot of times we hear from people saying, who's going to care for my child when I'm gone? Or we hear from people saying their siblings are going to care for them, which we're not a huge fan of, and we're not raining on anybody's big parade there, but we're more of a fan of planning and planning future options that are going to be best for your loved one with a disability. And we like to see siblings in a very happy, loving relationship, not an obligatory one if the caregiving needs are huge. And maybe siblings are successor trustee of navigating care for their loved one, but those are some examples. But developing a future care plan now will answer these questions. And when it comes to developing a future care plan, usually what we're talking about is, and we use this phrase a lot, we want to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And when we plan for the worst and we hope for the best, and the best actually happens, so what? You have a more lucrative retirement. Yay you, yay everybody. But when we fail to plan and the best doesn't happen, then things aren't going the way that we want them to for our loved one. They're not getting the care that we want them to get. They're not where that we want them to be. Some of the things that we talk about is if you know that you have a loved one that's going to have definitive care needs for the rest of their life, not just yours, consider touring facilities such as Brookwood, Marbridge, Daybark Living, New Danville. There's all kinds of 29 acres. There's all kinds of programs out there for adults with disabilities, and they're really awesome. So I'm not saying, hey, let's think about institutionalizing people. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, these programs are really awesome. When you go and tour them, you're going to see it feels good. You're going to see that the residents there are very happy there. They have friends, they have community, they have a job. They are important, and they really love it there. So what is your timeline? What are you looking at? So if you have a child that needs care for the rest of their life, not just yours, do you want them to stay with you until you're 65, 70, 75? Do you want them to stay with you until your dying days? The thing that I'm telling you is think about this now. While you're of sound mind and sound body and capable, think about these things and don't be, we have literally had calls from people where they're 80 years old, right? And they're saying, I'm realizing that I can't do this forever. So think about this, plan it early. work with us. We can get a future care cost estimate for you to kind of see what it looks like. Basically, the sooner you get going on those things, the more likely that your plan is going to unfold and be fully funded in the future. Some of these facilities, they have transition programs. Sometimes they have partial residential. Sometimes they have full residential. Sometimes they have respite services. Most of them have a trial where you could check it out. Like your loved one could stay there for a week or two or a month or whatever and kind of see how they fit and if it works. But some of the waiting lists for these facilities can be 5 years or longer. Some are not on waiting lists. But I'm just saying to just know and check these places out early and really check it out. Okay. So how will my child's care be funded in the future? So this is where we talk about, and I just want to say we're not going to have enough time to go deep and wide on SSI and Medicaid and Social Security, Disability, and Medicare. We did do a Government Benefits 101 webinar yesterday that's living on our YouTube channel, so you can check that out. We've done many presentations regarding SSI and Medicaid, working while getting SSI and SSDI. But the bottom line is we want to preserve your child's eligibility for state and federally funded programs. And some people may say, what are you talking about? We don't even get anything. What are you talking about? So a lot of our families don't qualify for anything until their child turns 18. Maybe they're getting MDCP, Medicaid through MDCP. Some people are getting Medicaid through a Medicaid buy-in program. There's some of those things going on. But for the most part, SSI and Medicaid has been denied because you simply make too much money or you have too much assets. Right now, the amount for SSI is $841 a month. So if your child is getting SSI and they're getting less than $841 a month, it's probably because you need to submit a rent or a fair share agreement. We can help you with that and kind of talk to you further about that offline. Or they are getting deductions for work, or sometimes they are simply just wrongly being deducted. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. So I'm excited to report that the Social Security offices are opening back up tomorrow for in-person appointments. It is largely suggested that you schedule an appointment and not just walk in, unless you have all day to sit down there all day, I do mean. We do recommend that you schedule appointments, but the Social Security offices have been closed to the general public unless it's an emergency for over 2 years. So this is a big deal that these offices are opening back up. They've been taking phone applications and phone support and online applications. So that is kind of new on the horizon, fresh out, and they are opening tomorrow. So one of the ways,
sorry.
sure.
Did you check the chat? There's a few comments as well. Well, one is saying that she needs a copy, letter of intent, template, and Janice is saying, do any of these communities take adults who need more care? My daughter has seizures, can't bathe herself, and can't take medicine on her own. Also, do any of them take HCS funds?
So we actually have some spreadsheets on that, like some of the different facilities. And the thing is they're all different. Do they take waivers or do they not? Some facilities take waivers, some do not. Some facilities can handle more complex needs. Other facilities require that they can bathe and use the bathroom on their own. So I think that part of it is just kind of a journey of kind of checking them off the list of which ones work and which ones don't. We do have a lot of lists of these types of facilities and have done some research on which ones take HCS waivers and which ones don't. But that is a good question. And so certainly, again, you can reach out and we can kind of put you in touch with some of those resources. And additionally, that letter of intent, like I said, we're going to send that out today. So if you registered for today's webinar, we have your email address. You're going to get the email with the slides, with the letter of intent, and with the recording today. So everybody will get that. So the bottom line is when it comes to SSI and Medicaid, there's basically two places that you can have money. There's an asset limit, a means-based test for SSI and Medicaid. The reason your child maybe hasn't qualified, you can't have more than $2,000 in your name. One car, one house. It's a little bit more, $3,000 basically if you're married, one house and one car. But it's, even if your child's a minor, it's based off of your household income, your assets, not the child. But as soon as the child turns 18, it's based off of their assets. So you do want to set up an appointment to apply for SSI and Medicaid. You do want to make sure that you have money in the right buckets. You do want to make sure that you have things set up properly prior to applying, because you can get denied if you make, if you have some things that are set up improperly. But the bottom line is, money over $2,000 you can have in a special needs trust or an ABLE account. ABLE account is a 529A for ABLE. And a lot of times people are asking me, like, how do we fund future care? So yeah, we're going to need our retirement assets that we've been saving up all of these years. How do we fund future care for our loved ones? And a lot of times you do what you've always done, is you pay for their care needs out of your current assets, your current income, just like you always have. And then upon your death, you have life insurance, and your child's third-party special needs trust is the beneficiary of that life insurance. So the life insurance proceeds will fund the future care for the trust. So those are some examples. And again, I know this is a lot of information, but we do have entire webinars on ABLE accounts, special needs trust, letter of intent, SSI, and Medicaid, entire webinars on those. Social Security, disability, and Medicare. Basically, if your child's disability started prior to age 22, Social Security, SSDI, Social Security disability is a pay-in system, meaning as we work, we pay in, we get earnings credits. They're called quarters. How many quarters do you have with the Social Security Administration? Our kids with disabilities that haven't worked haven't paid into the system, right? So when we apply for Social Security disability for these kids, they get denied. And a lot of times people are really angry, like, how could you even possibly say that this person is not disabled? What is wrong with you? Well, it's just the way that the system works. And it's kind of, the name is a little bit misleading for the Social Security disability, because you would just think that if a person is disabled, then they would qualify for that. But because they have to pay in, they don't necessarily qualify. They usually don't qualify. But what happens, the magic age of 22, is your child that doesn't work can be covered under a parent's record when the parent turns on Social Security disability or their own Social Security. Your disabled adult child can be eligible for up to 50% of your amount. So this is why you want to apply. You want to establish that your loved one's disability started prior to age 22, so that your loved one can be covered under your record when you pull the trigger for benefits. Because what I mean by that is, if you pull the trigger on your Social Security and your monthly Social Security is $4,000 a month, once you do that, your disabled adult child's benefit, basically, and there's always ifs and buts on everything, because there's a lot of moving parts and details on with Social Security, but basically 50%. So your disabled adult child would be entitled to $2,000. Okay, so that's why I have that on there. And again, those other webinars that go a little bit deeper. But an ABLE account is a place that you can have money outside of your $2,000. You can contribute $16,000 per year, and an additional $12,880 if you're working. Disability must have began prior to age 26 as it relates to an ABLE account. And to the person in the chat box earlier who asked about the Medicaid payback. So again, First Party Special Needs Trust has a Medicaid payback. The ABLE account also has a Medicaid payback. So basically what that means is, some people call it a clawback or a drawback or a payback. So those are all terms that are synonymous if you've heard them before. But basically, if the individual with a disability passes away, the Social Security Administration, they basically, the Medicaid system comes back in, the state, what if we paid this individual, and they take, they're basically paying themselves back. And if anything that is remaining in that account would go to the estate of the deceased, basically, is how that would work. So as far as an ABLE account, the beneficiary is the account owner. So unlike a 529C, like usually the parent is the account owner and then the student is the beneficiary. The beneficiary is the account owner in an ABLE account. ABLE accounts are good because the contributions are basically it's tax-free growth. It doesn't jeopardize SSI and Medicaid or other public benefits. And basically what you need to know on the ABLE account is if it can be construed as achieving a better life with for an individual with a disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. So that could be tutoring, that could be college, that could be an iPhone, it could be a laptop, it could be a car, it could be a vacation. If it could be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. You can also pay for food and shelter out of an ABLE account. And whereas if you pay for food and shelter out of a special needs trust, it's not that you can't do that, but there would be a reduction to SSI if you pay for food and shelter out of a special needs trust, because SSI is designed to pay for food and shelter. So when do I need a special needs trust? What about guardianship? So a special needs trust is going to preserve this benefit eligibility that we're talking about. Guardianship, there is a such thing, again, on our YouTube channel, guardianship, partial guardianship. In the state of Texas, we have supported decision-making, powers of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. There are a lot of options for your loved one with a disability, and a qualified attorney is going to help you explore those options and figure out what is the best option for the individual with a disability and that is least restrictive and most appropriate is basically the general consensus on guardianship. A lot of families assume that they need guardianship, and they may. There are families truly, if we've got, if we've got a student that doesn't, a loved one that doesn't walk and doesn't talk and has intellectual disabilities, and, those might be there are some slam dunks on guardianship, right? But there are a lot of things that are not a slam dunk: high functioning autism, ADHD, other impairments where maybe the IQ isn't low. But there's any one of these things. It's very, very, it's very personalized, and these attorneys are going to help you kind of look at your options and look what may be the best fit. And again, 6 months prior to the child turning 18. The key is having a qualified attorney to prepare these documents. That's the same with the special needs trust, guardianship. We make recommendations all the time. We partner with all kinds of attorneys all across the state that have talked to us about guardianship and special needs trust. But this is not let your neighbor do it because he's an attorney and he can do a trust. We want you to work with an attorney that really specializes in special needs. I mean, we have a lot of client attorneys that are working with other attorneys on the special needs side because they're doing a different practice. So just like I was talking earlier about a special needs planner and special needs planning, it's the same thing for a special needs attorney. You don't want a generalist on this. Your situation is specialized, so you want to work with an expert that really knows what they're doing. Again, we're definitely happy to make referrals on that. So some additional resources that are out there, that Oregon Transition Handbook. We know that that's another state, but it's a good handbook out there. Texas Reality Check, that's a good website. Dude, Where's My Transition Plan? So those are some other things that we want to talk about. Transitional residential programs. There is a Fulsher treatment to transition out in Needville. And basically, this is maybe a transitional living program for individuals that may be struggling from a mental health perspective, ages 18 to 24 for young adult women, depression, anxiety, personality disorders, addiction, trauma, etc. And basically, this is a residential program there on site, but then they have apartments in the community, and this is a program that is moving people towards independence. So I just want you guys to know about that. The Monarch School and Institute, they also have a transitional program, transition services, and they also have a residential living program out there. So that might be something that may be of interest to you as well. Advanced immersive transition program, and this is basically it was kind of born out of Gateway Academy Advanced Houston. So this is another basically transitional residential living program where they live semi-independently in apartments with support, but are getting all kinds of some of those life skills and building towards independence. So there are a lot of programs. Reach Unlimited, this is another one that we know of. So we just want to put these in your hand. I'm not saying that this is a good fit for you or your student. I'm, you know, any number of people that we have on our webinars, you know, there's basically a mixed bag of where people are on their journey. So we just want to put these out there in case you haven't heard of them. Here's a gap year residential program. It's called Dynamy. It's actually in Massachusetts. And this is, we see a lot more on the high functioning autism or ADHD. This may be a good program. A lot of families feel a little stressed about sending their kids out of state. Another thing that I didn't mention is Think College. I didn't have a slide on that today. Think College is a website that you can really look up all the schools out there that have programs for individuals with disabilities, not just in Texas, all across the United States. They have hundreds of schools out there. So thinkcollege.org is a great website to look at. And also, if you need one, you can email me on that. But we also have an educational consultant that we refer to. She doesn't work for us. We don't work for them. But we come across families all the time that are that say, listen, this seems like a lot, and I'd rather just pay somebody. I need somebody to help me find the right school for my kid. And so we have a specialized educational consultant. She's very familiar with all the programs all throughout the United States. She's made it her business to go tour these programs, and she'll get to know you and your family and the student. And she'll be able to make recommendations that might be a really, really good fit for you. So from a planning perspective, we've talked about a lot of things. If you've been on our webinars in the past, I always have things to remember to have kind of on your radar as it relates to planning for special needs. We've kind of hit on a lot of these. We've got webinars on every single one of these topics. So we definitely invite you to check out that YouTube channel for your convenience. Also, we'll put you on we have a monthly email, and don't worry, we won't spam you. We have a monthly email that will go out that has all of our webinars for the month, and then you can register for those. So if there's any ones that you want to attend live, then you can certainly do that as well. I always like to say, meet my team. We've got a few people here that are not pictured, but it is not just me. I do a lot of our webinars. I know Michelle does them too as well, but I always just like to say, you know, we work on a collaborative team here at Consolidated Planning Group, and we're definitely here to serve and help you with all of your planning needs. If you need a future care cost analysis, if you need a Social Security analysis, we're your team. We can definitely help you with those things. And our consultations are always free. So if it comes down to, you know, you've had some individualized questions that maybe we didn't answer today, or your situation is a little bit more personalized, you want to talk to us about that, you can schedule a free consultation, and we'll be happy to talk to you a little bit more about your situation. And kind of, we really try to take a look at the planning that you've done so far. We're not here to rain on any good relationships that you already have set up, or any good planning that you've done so far. We want to piggyback on that, kind of meet you where you are, and help you take the next steps in your journey. So if we can be of service to you, certainly reach out. And having said that, we just have a couple minutes left, Genesis. And so if you guys have any additional questions, if you guys will just put them in your chat box.
I didn't see like any other questions besides the last one, but yeah, like a lot of things came up to my mind, and I'm like thank God she's gonna send the things so I can the PowerPoint so I can review it later. I thought it was
it starts being a lot, and then sometimes people tell me I talk fast. Anyway, there's a lot of information to cover in a short period of time. But the good news is we talk frequently. We do these webinars frequently, and again, you can look at anything you want on our YouTube channel at any time that is convenient for you. So what I would just like to say is thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you for joining us. So you're going to get the slides, you're going to get the recording, we're going to send out the PDF. We normally don't, but we're going to send that PDF out for the letter of intent. So you can start on that, and we'll put those tools in your hand. And it's certainly been my pleasure partnering with you, Genesis, and we look forward to partnering again soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.